Hello, Tech Support by RD here, and in this video I'm going to show you how to create your very own form in Google Forms. Now, Google Forms is designed to be an online form service. You can build your own forms and you can send those out online to other users, and you can have them fill out your form and you'll be able to collect responses effectively. There are a lot of purposes for Google Forms, most notably the templates that we have available to us here show us some of the potential uses of Google Forms. So before we delve into building a new form from scratch, I'm just going to expand this template gallery real quick so that we can get ideas of what kinds of forms we can build with Google Forms. So we have some basic commonly used templates on the top. However, they've been categorized more as we scroll down here. So the most basic forms that you can create with Google Forms, you can create contact information forms, RSVP forms, party invites, t-shirt sign up, and event registration. So if you have a birthday party and you need to know if people are arriving or not, or if you're working on an event and you need a list of people who are coming, Google Forms can work well for you. Google Forms also finds its use for users in work and education environments. So for example, you can build order forms, feedback forms, job application forms, time off request, and various request forms and feedback forms. And Google Forms also supports scoring. So it's useful for assessments and worksheets that are given out by teachers, and quizzes too. And it's also useful for building other tools like an exit ticket and course evaluation forms as well. So those are some of the things you can do with Google Forms, and it's literally limited by whatever you type in a certain form. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and build a form of our own. So for this, you can go to forms.google.com, or from any Google website, you can open this app menu here, the Google Apps menu, and scroll to Forms, and you'll also arrive on the same page here. A shorter way to go here is to type forms.google.com in the address bar of your browser. I currently have that hidden because I'm in full screen, but yeah, that's one way to go to Google Forms. All you need to use Google Forms is a Google account. If you're already using Gmail, or if you have your own personal Google account, that will work. However, if you are using a Google account that belongs to an organization, such as a company or a university or a school, you'll have a little bit of some different features also available to you. However, everything that I'm going to be showing you today here in this video should be applicable to everyone, regardless of what kind of Google account you have. So let's build ourselves a new form. And the way you do that is by clicking on any of these templates, and you will get a form with that template instantly the moment you click on it. Right now, we're going to build a blank form because we want to explain some of the basics of building a form. Let's click on the blank form here, and Google Forms gives us this template that we can work on. So a form is split up into three sections that we can access. Questions, these are the things. This is the actual form, and this is what your respondents will see when they go to your form and answer it. The responses tab here is where our responses would go. Right now it's empty because we haven't sent this out and we have yet to build our form. And the settings tab here allows us to change some settings. This is where you can turn a form into a quiz to provide grading and feedback. One of the features I mentioned earlier, it could change how responses are collected and how items are presented in the form. We'll not touch these settings for now. We'll go back to questions tab here. Okay, so the first thing you'll see on the top is the form's title. The form title goes here, and by default it's going to say untitled form. Now in this example, we're going to build a simple contact form. Let's pretend that we want to get names and phone numbers and email addresses of some people. So let's call this form contact form. Okay, so we have a title for a form. Now, each form is required to have a title. There's also a space for a description. So you can type a brief description of what your form is about. This is a contact form for, let's say, tech support by RD subscribers and followers. Fill up this form to receive updates about new video releases and channel events. So that's an example of a form description where you describe what the form is about and what it's for. This is optional. And by the way, there's some recent introduction or new features added to Google Forms. You can now add formatting. This is a recent addition. So if, for example, if you want to make this bold, you can highlight it just like you would in a word processor and click the bold link, and that text is bolded out. Or you can put some effects like an underline as well. And you can create lists, or you can insert links. Or if you want to erase the formatting from the text you selected, you can do so as well. Okay, so that's the form title and description. Title is always required, so of course you can tell what form you're filling up. A description, it's not required, it's optional, but it helps your respondents will determine what kind of form is this for and what they will get when they fill up the form. Okay, so in this blank form template, we are already provided with a question here. Now, in Google Forms, each of these these items that we can fill up are called questions. And a question comes in multiple types of possible responses that we can give out. So of course we have the question title, we have the question content, so you can type a question here, and you have your kind of response that you would like to get. So for example, let's type in a question. It could be a question in the sense of the word, so you can type something like, what is your name, question mark, or it can be just a name of a field. So let's type name, for example. Okay, name, there we go. Now you'll notice that when you type the question content, the kind of item that this will take, it's automatically changed depending on the whatever you typed here. So in the case of name, it gave us a short answer kind of response that's expected for this item, or question rather. Okay, so yeah, you just enter what kind of item you need, like what is your name, question mark, or it could be something simple as a label. And by default, Google Forms tries to change the question type to something that fits in with whatever you typed here. So let's add a new field, something like email address. It also changes it to short answer, and something like, do you want to receive notifications? It will suggest, if you want, suggest some possible items. If you click add all, we'll say yes, no, or maybe, or you can delete things that you need as well by clicking the X's on the side. So you may have noticed, how am I able to add these different items? So I've just clicked this button here. So pay attention to whichever question is selected. You can select a question by clicking on it, and this toolbar is going to follow along with whatever you selected. So to add a question, we use the first button here that says Add Question. If you want to import questions from a different form, that's an advanced feature. We'll not talk about that today. Another thing you can add is a title and description. Now, this is different from the main title and description because this allows you to add an explanation in the middle of the form. You can also add an image to the form as its own block, or you can add a video, and you can section off your form. However, we'll not talk about those today. We'll talk about the basics. So what we really need is a question, add a question. So far we have 3 questions in our form: a name, an email address, and do you want to receive notifications? Let's go with the name field first. So let's talk about short answer, the various kinds of fields that are available to us here. So if you click the drop down, we have a variety of response types to choose from. The most basic is short answer. And a short answer question. Basically, there's a short blank, which is enough to type a one-line response of sorts. So for something like a name, you need a simple line. Also for the email address. If I click on the plus add a question here, let's go to the next choice, paragraph. This will provide a much wider field. So let's say, um, what kinds of videos would you suggest for future uploads, or topics rather? Um, so this is where a paragraph, the second kind of item, comes in. It provides us with an even bigger space to put our response. So for typing out sentences or paragraphs or essay responses, this is great. Let's add a new item here, and we'll try these three items in a bit. So, oh, we already have one. Now, looks like I added this in by mistake. Now, if you want to remove an item because you don't intend to use it, or you put it accidentally like we have, there are two buttons available to us, duplicate and delete. The delete button takes this question off of our form. So let's click on it to get rid of it. By the way, the delete button and the duplicate button, by the way, it creates a copy of the question, so you can just change some of the text without changing some of the settings. Let's delete that again. By the way, if you're not seeing these buttons on the item you wish to delete, make sure it's selected. You can just click on the question itself, or probably on the question text to select an item, or you can. Okay, so here the next kind of item we have is multiple choice, and as we've seen, it gives the user radio buttons, so you can only select one response. So you can select yes or you can select no, but you cannot select both. Let's add a new item here. Let's say what applications are you currently using? And we want sort of a checklist of sorts where users could pick different combinations of applications that they use. So that's where the next the next response type, checkboxes, comes in. So let's say um, productivity, suites. Yeah, I'm starting to lose. And by the way, if you want to add an option here, you click here. You can say web browsers, multimedia applications, um, system utilities, and here in the checkboxes kind of response type, users can select any combination. They can just put a check beside something that they are going to respond to. So you can just check one of these, or all four, or only two of them, or any three of them. And you may have noticed that in both multiple choice and checkboxes kind of responses, we have an option to add an other option. If we click that, there's this other field that pops up. And what this allows you to do, your respondents rather to do, if they check that, they can type in their own response, their own custom response to the item. So if what they're looking for is not in the list, they can check this and type whatever they need on their own. Okay, now let's add one more item here, and we'll choose drop down. And drop down is similar to multiple choice, but the only difference is that instead of presenting each choice in a separate line, it compresses all of the options in a drop down. So if you do not want to, so for things like a list of things, and you do not want that list to be you don't want your respondent to scroll through a long list, you can use the drop down instead. So let's say, what operating system are you currently using? Okay, so let's say Windows 7, let's say Windows 8, Windows 8.1, Windows 10, Windows 11, okay, Windows 11, let's say Mac OS 10 point, I forgot, Mac OS 10, Mac OS 11, I think they, Mac OS 10 is, that's supposed to be X. Um, Mac OS 11 or Mac OS 12. I really forgot the other versions of Mac OS that are available today. I forgot their code names. However, this is good enough for our examples here. Um, so drop down, so you don't have to scroll. We'll show that in a moment when we preview the form. Let's add one more item. We have a file upload field. Now, file upload is a special kind of field because this allows your respondents to upload files, you know, like a PDF or a JPEG, something this is useful for things like scanned documents. Now, because uploaded files are going to go to your Google Drive, um, respondents are going to be required to sign into Google. And when file upload questions are added to the form. This is because um, their files are going to be uploaded to your Google Drive. So, of course, naturally, your respondents have to have a Google account and have to be signed in. So if you click continue, your respondents will be required to sign into Google. For now, let's not deal with that because we want anyone on the internet to be able to answer this form. The next kind here, the three kinds here are linear scale, multiple choice grid, and checkbox grid. Now these are a little bit advanced, but let's start with linear scale. So linear scale is really great for doing something called a Likert scale, and if you are doing something like least satisfied to most satisfied, a scale of 1 to 5, something like um, how much are you satisfied with the quality of videos on the channel? Okay, you can have a scale of 1 to 5 there. Let's add one more. And you can see that it automatically formatted, okay, let me deselect it, automatically formatted it into a 1 to 5 scale with least to most satisfied options. Multiple choice grid, this is if you have to create rows and columns. So, for example, if you want to create some of a variation on the Likert scale with these, how would you um, how would you rate the videos based on the following qualities? So let's say content, length, let's say variety. Okay, let's just simplify this to length. Variety, what else? Um, uh, information density, um, usefulness. Okay, I'm running out of ideas at the moment, but let's try these four, and we can try. Um, let's try least suitable, somewhat um, suitable, very suitable. I'm running out of examples here, so let's deselect that, and you can see that we get a variation on the linear scale, except that you have to select one response across for each item. And let's duplicate this item, and we'll change it to a checkbox grid. Notice that when I change the kind of item to something similar, it tries to keep our contents the same. So checkbox grid, similar to multiple choice grid, except you can check different combinations of boxes as well. Let's add one last field, or two last fields, date and time. Okay, date, self-explanatory. You'll require your response to enter a date. So something like when is your birthday? Okay, and then let's add time. Okay, what time do you usually watch our videos? Okay, so self-explanatory as well, you pick a time. Now, at this point, we can send out our form immediately to our respondents, or you can preview the form by using this button on the upper right corner. We'll hit preview so we can see for ourselves what the form looks like. Okay, we got redirected to a new tab here, and here we have the title of the form, we have the description, and right now I'm signed in to my Google account right here, and we got a cloud here. Now, by default, if your respondents are signed into a Google account, their progress will be saved. So if, for example, they forgot to fill up the form midway, they close the form and they come back to it, their existing responses will be kept. Now, I'm not sure how this will behave for someone who isn't signed in, but since I'm not signed in, but I'm signed in rather, I'm getting this feature. So here we have our two short fields. We're named, let's say John Doe. Email address, let's say someone@example.com. So you can see short response fields, enough space to type out 1 line's worth of response. And what kind of topics it will suggest for future uploads. You can see we have an even wider blank available to us, so we can type full sentences. Okay, I'll just copy and paste this so you can get an idea of how much you can fit in there. Now, if we compared this long paragraph to short answer fields, you can see that in a short answer field, this is really designed for things that fit on a single line, whereas paragraphs are designed, to take up much space to accommodate the response. So let's return this to John Doe. And here we have our multiple choice item. We can select one, yes or no. Here, checkboxes, we can select only one, or we can select two, any combination of the two. We can select three, we can select all four, and we can check this checkbox, and let's say we are also using games as well as an example response. Here we have our drop-down, and you'll notice that we have a drop-down box, and we can select our response here. I'm currently using Windows 10, so we hit that. How much are you satisfied with quality of videos on the channel? Let's answer 5. You can see that in our this kind of response, you can select one option, but it's presented as a scale. Here we have our grid. You'll notice that we have columns, and you are required to, and this is meant to select, one response for each row. So let's say these are answers. And we have our checkboxes here, a variation as well. And unlike the above, we can check one of the boxes in each row, or we can check 2 boxes, or 3, or we can check all 4 if that's what's applicable. And our date and time fields. So let's enter 01/01/1970 as a date, or what time do you usually watch? Let's say around 3 in the afternoon. So we have an AM and PM here, so let's type 3 o'clock. So yeah, and if we hit submit, our responses are sent. And if I go back to the previous tab that we have here, let's close this. We already have a response waiting for us. So yeah, the preview link is not just a preview, it's the actual form as well. So when we hit send earlier, it actually sent it to our responses. So to view the responses that we have, we click on the second tab. Now, if you've paid attention to this earlier, you'll notice that we have no number, but we have a number beside it, letting us know how many responses we've received so far. We've received a single response, so let's click on it. So you can see we have 3 views available to us. We have a single response yet, so not much is available for us to do here. So we have our name response, email address, our paragraph, our checkbox here, our multiple choice, checkboxes, our drop-down, and the data here is formatted automatically based on the kind of item you've entered. So yeah, so that's there are three views available to us for responses. Summary view, Google Forms is going to consolidate all of the responses into useful graphs, so you can easily see at a glance the response of your respondents to the various items. Next is question view, so you can isolate respond. You can isolate. You can see, for example, if you're interested in applications, you can see the contents of various responses on a single screen to a particular question. And in individual, you can see what the form looked like to a respondent when they filled out your form. So you can see what the form looked like to them and how they filled it out exactly. And you can navigate to next different responses here, but since this is just the one, we only have one, we can access only this one. And at the bottom, you can find out when the form was submitted. So yeah, we're almost done. And one last thing, settings. We'll not talk about quiz modes for now. We'll talk about response settings that are available to us here. You have an option to collect email addresses. Um, this means that an email field will appear at the top of your form. Send responders a copy of their response. When you enable this to when requested, you'll give your respondents an option to receive an email of the form that they just filled up for the record. So you can say when requested if you want them to provide their email to receive a copy of the form when they're done, or you can set it to always. And when you set this to always, yeah, you'll definitely need an email address for that. Let's leave it off for now. The next setting is allow response editing. I just turned it on here by clicking the title. Now what this allows you to do is when a respondent is finished filling up a form, they have the option to edit their response. So if let's say they made a mistake after they submitted the form, they have an option to edit their existing response and by change some of the fields and resubmit the form, and their response will be updated. Now, this is great for things like contact forms. It's like someone updates their phone number, you can say, okay, go to the form again and change your number and you're done. Now, for best results, I recommend that you also collect email addresses and send a response here as well. So there's an easier way to edit the form response in the future. However, if you're not collecting email addresses, the only way for this option to be effective is if you visit the auto-generated link that's given to you when you submit the form. So obviously, if you're running something like a quiz where you do not want people to change their responses after the fact, you can turn that off. Now, the last item available to us here is limit to one response, and this will require everyone filling up your form to sign into with their Google account. So this ensures that every single Google account who comes in and answers your form, they only get one shot to answer the form, and they won't be able to answer again with the same account. However, if you have response editing enabled, when they arrive at the form and they already answered, they can edit their existing response as well. The next category available to us is presentation. You have an option to show a progress bar at the bottom of your form. So this is useful when we get to advanced sectioning of forms later on. Shuffle question order does what it says on the tin. It's going to change the order that the items are presented. Now, this is useful if you have quizzes, so you do not show the exact combination of questions to two different students. However, not much of use for a standardized form. We have after submission options, confirmation message. This is what respondents will see when they're done filling up the form. The default message is which response has been recorded. You have an option to show a link to submit another response. You can turn that on. So when respondents click on that link, they'll fill out a new copy of the form. The next item is result summary. And result summary is basically this screen here, result summary. Um, you can enable this, and all of the form respondents will be able to see a summary of results. Now, you might want to keep the setting turned off, especially if you're dealing with personal info, but if you're doing something like a survey, you can turn this on, and so your form respondents, once they're done answering the form, they'll be able to see how others responded as well. And under restrictions, a recently added option, autosave. You can, as I've mentioned earlier, if you're signed into a Google account, your responses will be autosaved. You can disable it from here if you do not want autosave to be enabled on the form. Again, useful for things like quizzes. So those are some of the form settings. Oh, and finally, once you've configured the form and tested that it's working the way you intended, let's talk about how to send the form for filling up. So to do that, we click on the send button here, upper right corner of your screen, and you have different ways of sending out a form. You can send it via email address, so you can type email address of your recipients, a subject line to their email, and a message about the form. You can include the form itself as part of the email, or you can just include a link. Second way of sending a form is the simplest. You can get a link to the form. This is the actual link to the form. You can copy it by clicking this link, or you can just select the link and Control-C it. And the third way, for those of you with websites, you can embed the form. This is an advanced use case, useful for those of you with your own websites. You can embed your form. You can just specify the correct height and width of the form as it will appear on the website that you want to use this with. Again, this is a advanced use case, and you also have an option to copy. And you can also share your form via social media as well, Facebook and Twitter in this example. So the simplest is copy the link here, and you can paste that link to something like your chats or text message or whatever you want. And let's copy this link as an example. And let's open a tab, and to fill up the form, all you have to do, visit the URL you just copied in your web browser, and you get the form. There it is. So that's some of the basics on getting Google Forms up and running, creating your own form, the different kinds of items, and the settings available to you. I hope this video is useful, and thanks for watching.